Hello, my creeplings. I'm just gonna make a note. It's raining outside. It's not raining too bad. Hopefully, it doesn't get crazy while I'm trying to film this and I don't lose power or anything. Unfortunately, where I live, that's kind of a thing. If the rain gets bad, we get a lot of power flickers. So anyway, spooky rainy night. I actually just watched a movie I've been wanting to watch for over a decade. Finally got the chance to sit down and watch it, and I'm glad I did. This is Sinister from 2012. I remember when this came out, and I remember thinking, oh, that looks interesting. I never did get the chance to sit down and watch the damn thing. And I'm kind of regretting that now. This was directed by Scott Derrickson. He's definitely played in the genre before, responsible for The Exorcism of Emily Rose, Hellraiser Inferno, The Black Phone, and he was the guy behind the first Doctor Strange movie from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So, guy can handle a big production, and it shows here. Written by Scott Derrickson and C. Robert Cargill. Now, he used to be a film critic for a handful of online sites. He had pseudonyms. I can't remember them all off the top of my head. But he's also responsible for writing this and the sequel to this, the first Doctor Strange movie, and both Black Phone movies as well. So again, guy plays in the genre, so he understands the genre. This is a Blumhouse film, so produced by Jason Blum and Brian Kavanaugh Jones. Production companies are Summit Entertainment, Alliance Films, Automatic Entertainment, Blumhouse Productions, IM Global, and Alliance Films UK Limited. So names you see show up in genre films a lot, especially Blumhouse. Distributed by Lionsgate through Summit in the US. So again, another name that's known for horror and genre. This was released at South by Southwest in March of 2012, so March 11th. But it was released to general cinemas across the U.S. in October 12th, 2012. So this was a spooky season release. So genre film in the spooky season, they knew what they were doing with that. It made its budget back. It was only a $3 million movie. It made $87.7 million. So it definitely made its money back, which allowed it to spawn a sequel, which I have not seen yet. So let me put that out there. This was, let's see, an interesting cast. A lot of names that, for the most part, a lot of names and faces that I did not recognize, but the faces and the names I recognized, oh boy. We have Ethan Hawke as our lead character, Ellison Oswald. If you are a person of my age range, which would be very late Gen Xer, geriatric millennial, you know who Ethan Hawke is. You know him from his younger heartthrobby days in movies like, Before Sunrise, and those three movies, Julie Delpy, Mystery Date, White Fang from the Disney Corporation. He was a cutie, but I'm telling you right now, I'm liking him older. I am liking him as dad. I have seen him, now that he is older, playing different roles. I loved him in the Moon Knight show on Disney Plus as the bad guy. So I'm definitely getting a new appreciation for Mr. Ethan Hawke. I always thought he was a decent actor, pretty good actor, decent looking guy. I'm loving him more now as dad. A name and face I don't really recognize playing his wife Tracy Oswald is an actress named Juliette Rylance. The kids, Trevor and Ashley, I do not recognize the children who play them, but the son is played by Michael Hall Daddario. No idea if that's any relation to Alexandra Daddario and Claire Foley. We have, though, Fred Thompson as the sheriff. Now, I saw Fred Thompson. I'm like, I know that guy. Where do I know that guy from? That guy used to be a Republican senator out of Tennessee from 1994 to 2003. He attempted to run for the Republican presidential candidate in 2008. Of course, he did not make it. So I'm like, I looked that up and I'm like, yeah, so where else do I know him from? I'm an idiot. He was on Law & Order and Law & Order SVU for years as District Attorney Branch. He also tends to play a lot of sheriffs, politicians, other cops, guys in charge. He's got that very guy in charge character actor feel. It was a treat. And then we have the deputy who's named, they call him Deputy So-and-so. James Ransoni, I believe is how you pronounce the last name. He's also done some genre work. The It 2-part movie, not the mini-series, but the new one. He played adult Eddie Kaspbrak in part 2. And then he was also in The Black Phone as well. And I think I saw maybe another couple more horror movies. So he kind of knows his way around the genre as well. And then Vincent D'Onofrio. Yes, D'Onofrio himself has an uncredited appearance as Professor Jones later, in a couple of scenes later in the film. Okay, so we open up with the Super 8 8mm home movie of 4 people getting hung from a tree. Okay, nice opener, great. Credits roll, and then we cut to a family moving into a home. This is the family of true crime writer Ellison Oswald. He has moved his family to Chatford, Pennsylvania, because he's researching his next book on the murder of the previous owners, the home movie that was just shown. So the mom, dad, and 2 of the kids were found hung from the tree. But the little girl, whose name is Stephanie Stevens, the family is the Stevensons. Their daughter, their 10-year-old daughter, Stephanie, has gone missing. So this is what he's writing about. Now, there are some cracks in their family dynamic and relationship, because 10 years ago, this guy, Ellison Oswald, had a huge true crime hit. Well, his subsequent books have not been as good. They've been flops. So he's chasing after the Stevenson story. Here's the thing. He has not told his wife or his children that they moved into the murder house. She's expecting, apparently he keeps moving them closer to where he's doing his research. And she's used to, run-ins with the cops, because he doesn't exactly paint cops in the best light in his books. Where they, treat them without very much respect, not very well. Basically, she's used to being a social pariah. She's used to living a couple of blocks away or a couple houses away from the murder house. So he is definitely withholding from her. The daughter did not want to move. And the local sheriff doesn't want him there. And Trevor, the son, he's 12. He's a bit of a douche. Cocky, but like 12-year-old boy who keeps getting uprooted and moved around and probably is bullied. Yeah, he's going to be at that acting out stage. They are getting settled in. The rules about his office are the doors are shut and Daddy's office is always locked. The kids aren't allowed to go in there because they're not supposed to be looking at what he's working on, because Trevor has seen it and some issues have happened, and that comes up again a little bit later. I think their second night? Their first or second night there. Might be their second night. The timeline on this, I don't know if it's because of the pacing. I kept kind of zoning out And kind of thinking about the past scenes, trying to string it all together. So I may say first night, second night. I could be wrong on my timing because I kept going back to catch other things. I actually backtracked a few times in this movie to rewatch a few things. So if you're like me and maybe a little bit neurospicy, I don't even want to say neurospicy because I know a lot of people who are neurospicy that can focus. If you're like me and you tend to at times have issues focusing because you're going back to analyze stuff from the beginning, or I'm also, this is near the end of my day right now. I'm starting to feel it. I'm getting ready into my wind down time, so maybe my brain is, trying to step down. So if you're like me, you may want to wait, kind of watch this, when you're at your awake point. No distractions around you, because I will say the rain was distracting me a little bit. And pay attention. Because this is a really fun... Okay, for me it was fun. I will say it's a very good movie. I like when movies make me think and make me kind of put two and two together, and even though sometimes I find it very hard to pay attention to new information while I'm still processing the old information. Okay, but going back to, they're unpacking, and Ellison's putting things in the attic. He finds a box, which he opens up, and it's got a scorpion in it, a projector, and reels of Super 8 film labeled home movies. So he takes them downstairs, and after the kids go to bed and everything, he, sorry, I need to turn this around so I can look at my notes on the other side, starts watching one of the first movies, and all of the films you find out over the course of several nights are footage of different families being murdered in various ways. There's one, I can't remember what order he watched these in, but the notes I have, that one is labeled Pool Party, 66. The family was drowned in a pool. Burned to death in a car in the garage. Barbecue, 79. This is one of the later ones he watched, and they did not really get too deep into it. But Run Over by a Lawnmower. I would have loved to have seen more of that, but rightfully so, he was very appalled and shocked about what he was seeing when he was researching this particular film. And it focused on him being disgusted, and the movie was blurry in the background. So I just would have loved to see what they would have done with the effects. But anyway, so that was Lawn Work, 86. Throat Slit in Their Beds, Sleepy Time, 98. And then The Hanging of the Stevensons, which is Family Hanging Out, 11. I want to say he starts with the Stevensons and it bounces back and forth from there. So after he watches the first one, he's a bit shocked. He hears noises. Turns out it's his daughter. She can't find the bathroom. It's their first night in the new home. Okay, understandable. So he gets her settled, gets her back into bed, and he goes back to watching these movies. I want to say it's the same night where, again, later he hears more noises and goes to check and see if it's his daughter. She's asleep, but one of the moving boxes is kind of in the middle of the hallway, and they frame it with, light shining on everything. It moves, and out of it comes his son, who does this, and this is what I actually wrote in my notes. Possessed spider hang, and like he kind of hanging out, trying to do I think it's called the spider walk, and he's screaming. Turns out the kid has night terrors and sleepwalks. He's had them in the past. They thought he had grown out of it, but apparently not. So, this happens a couple times. See, there I go. Talk about me winding down at night. So Ellison seems to think that the killings were done by the camera operator. That's how it appears. That's how it's framed. He's kind of like, at first he calls the local PD, but then right before, or not right before, that he gets connected to an actual officer, and she's like, how can I help you? And he just hangs up the phone. So obviously he thinks, okay, we might have a serial killer here. I'm not going to turn this in. I'm going to track this down myself. So he keeps the films. He starts studying them. Every day, things get worse. He's arguing with his wife more. He's drinking earlier and heavier. I mean, I understand being a true crime writer. You're going to see some horrific shit. And I understand, especially people of that generation, getting to the point where you're drinking a bit more. And it sounds like, from one of the arguments he had with his wife, this is something that he does near the end of the book when he's got a lot more shit that he's having to process it on his plate. But this is starting rather early. I think by like the third day, the third or fourth night, or so it seems like the third or fourth night. Again, timeline on this isn't very clear to me, at least. So she's like, you're drinking earlier, you're drinking during the day, you know, you need to. She's very supportive, but by the end of it all, let's see. I have it written down somewhere. Here it is. Wife isn't very thrilled with her husband's choice of genre, but she's supportive nonetheless. But she is at the end of her patience with this bullshit. She basically has said she will leave with the kids if this goes sour or goes south. She's got a slight English accent, so I couldn't tell if she actually said sour or south. But when the shit hits the fan, if it hits the fan really bad, she's skipping with the kids. And again, I do not blame this woman. He starts noticing this mysterious symbol and a strange figure in the films. So he matches one of the reels to the 1998 murder of the Miller family and the disappearance of their 13-year-old son, Chris. Now, every night he hears noises around the house. Well, he hears noises in the attic one night, so he goes to investigate. Now, inside the film, the box that the film canisters were in, inside the lid, there are some doodles. Let's see, where's it? There's a snake inside. It's a king snake. I don't know why they chose a king snake, because it's non-venomous and it's a constrictor. If you're going to choose a snake for, you know, an evil thing, you would want like a something that's venomous. But it was a king snake, and it freaked him out a little bit. But then he notices the doodles on the inside of the box lid, and they're like a little kid just doodled the killings. You know, mommy, daddy, brother, sister, and it's, you know, they're lying in their beds and their heads are chopped off, like a little doodle of it. And then, but around each and every one of these, there's a figure that they have labeled Mr. Boogie. So this is a story about a boogeyman. This is boogeyman genre here, which those are few and far between anymore, but they used to be like Freddy Krueger could be considered a boogeyman. They called Michael Myers the boogeyman. I like me a good boogeyman story. I really do. I'm looking in my notes. I keep losing space. Okay, so at one point, again, noises at night. He thinks he's looking out the window, out at the tree where the hangings took place, and he thinks he sees Mr. Boogie. Then he looks again, and he goes out, and it's his son. Again, sleepwalking, night terrors. And they get the kids settled. He goes back out to go get the baseball bat and the flashlight, and he's confronted by a Rottweiler. Now, by this point, we've also been given the information that the children, the missing kids, are all haunting the house. So, and, you know, so he's out in the garden, the backyard. This Rottweiler's growling at him. He's trying to stand up, but behind him, all these dead kids, all these ghost kids are behind him. And then the dog skips out. So, it was a big Rottweiler, cute puppy though. So, the whole time this is escalating during the day, the deputy, who he accepts the nickname of Deputy So-and-so. He's an Ellison fan. And he's like, you know, in your acknowledgments, how you always, you know, say it wouldn't be possible without the help of Deputy So-and-so. He's like, I'd like to be your Deputy So-and-so because I'd like to, you know, help make a difference. So through Deputy So-and-so, I don't think we ever really get his real name. We just call him Deputy So-and-so. So through Deputy So-and-so, we learned that all the murders took place in different cities across the country. So, Oregon, Sacramento, and San Diego? Or San Jose, St. Louis. So, yeah, it's kind of moving, in this case, east. So, different cities across the country at a different time. So they date back to 1976. So again, the dates on the canisters. 66, 79, 86, 98. There was nothing in the 2000s, but there was one in the 10s. Following every murder, a child from each family disappeared. So, they're talking, and the deputy tells Ellison to call the college. There's a Professor Jonas who specializes in the occult and the quote-unquote weird shit. So he sends him a picture of the symbols seen in the films. And Jonas, who already has figured out, from looking at the symbol, what murders he's investigating, because it's not a commonly known pagan symbol. This is for, he links it to the pagan Babylonian god Bugul. He's an eater of children. Folk tales of Bugul involve him tricking or luring children away from safety so they become trapped in his world, in his realm, and then he consumes them. However, he consumes them. So Jonas suspects that maybe the murders are part of a cult initiation rite rather than an outright serial killer, which would make sense since this is spanning from 1966 to 2011. That'd be a really old serial killer. Not that I'm saying, you know, age ain't nothing but a number sometimes, but it makes more sense. Well, it finally reaches a point where Ellison's just like, fuck it, I'm done. This point is, Ashley, she likes to paint on the walls in her room, and she's allowed to. They let her do it. It's fine, whatever. Well, she paints on the wall in the hallway, and she paints a picture of a little girl who she says is Stephanie, who used to live here. Okay. So this little girl, this daughter, painted a picture of the missing little girl because she couldn't do it in the room that she was in now because that used to be her brother's room. So again, really freaky shit. And like later, it's either that night or the night later. Every night he's woken up after about like the second or third night when shit really starts escalating to the 8mm, the projector playing a film. By itself, no one's been in the office, it's locked, the kids can't get in there, the wife is sleeping next to him. Well, it finally comes to a head where the projector's playing in the attic, and all the missing kids are up there watching one of the films. Bughuul appears on the camera before appearing directly before Ellison. He's horrified, falls down the ladder going up into the attic, and he gets the fucking kids and his wife out there after he destroys the camera, the projector, the films, everything. And he moves them back to their old house because it hasn't sold yet. So they're unpacking, and he gets a call. Well, he gets 2 calls. He gets a video conference from Dr. Jonas, and he sends him some scans, and they talk about it, about the symbol, and then the 3 symbolic creatures that Ellison that are tied to Bughuul. Ellison has already encountered them. Let's name them: the scorpion, the snake, and a dog. So all encountered at the Stevenson house. Early Christians, there are not a lot of images remaining from, the Dark Ages and antiquity of Bughuul, because early Christians believed that images of Bughuul served as a gateway for him to come and collect people and wreak havoc in the mortal world. So Ellison ends the call and takes the call from Deputy So-and-so, who's been trying to call him all day. Now, Deputy So-and-so, he's not stupid. You'd think he's gonna be painted like a backwater cop who's kind of an idiot. Now, he did say he took, graduated with a degree in criminology and everything. And it turns out this guy is pretty serious about his job. He wants to help and he wants to do better. He finds a pattern. So, before the Stevensons moved to Chatford, they lived in the Millers' former house in St. Louis. So, basically, the pattern is the family lives in the murder house. The hauntings ramp up so that the family moves. Well, when the family moves, that's when Mr. Boogie makes his move. So, by moving back to their old house, Ellison has started the chain again. Now, had he stayed in the Miller house, yes, they would have been haunted and tormented, but it could have just stopped there. Now, so that Ellison discovers the box, he panics, he kind of runs around the house. The box of projector and reels have relocated, undamaged, into their attic, along with a new reel labeled extended cut endings. So, he recuts everything, and the extended cut depicts the missing children coming into frame, following each murder, revealing themselves as the perpetrator. They give this kind of, and then they disappear. And at the same time, he finally figures this out. He puts everything together. He starts feeling really lightheaded and weird, and he looks down into his coffee mug, and there's this green residue, and a good night note that says, "Good night, Daddy," from his daughter. Turns out Ashley is the next child possessed by Mr. Boogie. And he passes out. He comes to, sees his wife and his son bound and gagged and drugged. And he is also bound and gagged. And Ashley, possessed, walks up with an 8mm camera and an axe. And she says, "I'm going to make you famous again, Daddy." And she basically proceeds to dismember her family. She takes the blood from her family and paints childish symbols all over the house with their blood, along with the Bughuul symbols and all that crap. And she finishes by doodling her murder scene in the box, just like every other kid did. And eventually, Mr. Boogie appears and claims Ashley and walks into the film with her. We cut back to the attic. The box is there along with the newest addition to the home movies, house painting, 2012. And then we get a final jump scare with Mr. Boogle. Now, the nucleus of this movie is interesting. This was inspired by a nightmare that C. Robert Cargill had after watching the 2002 film The Ring. So, The Ring obviously hit a note with him, and then he, wrote this and expanded upon it, and they went with it. It also feels like it was very much inspired by the snuff film legends, urban legends, and, everybody's got their old home movies, on old media. So the Super 8 stuff was actually shot on 8mm film. This premiered at South by Southwest, and it did very well. Now, an interesting 2020 study by Broadband Choices named this the scariest film ever made, based on an analysis of viewers' heart rates, which that's kind of interesting. But yeah, so he had a nightmare, in which he discovered a film in his attic depicting the hanging of an entire family, so he used this to set up the plot for Sinister. Now, when it comes to creating Boogle, he conceptualized a new take on the boogeyman called him Mr. Boogie. He liked the idea that the creature would be both terrifying yet seductive to kids, appealing to children. So, luring them to their dooms, he used terms like sinister Willy Wonka-like figure. But, that kind of was a bit goofy. So, they thought that it might read as silly. So, they were looking for inspiration. Derrickson types the word horror into a search engine. Into Flickr. And just started going through the 5 million images that came up. And he narrowed it down, and he found this picture that they just called Natalie. So they were particularly struck by Natalie. And they bought the rights to the photo and used that to create the look of Boogle. It reminded him of the makeup and costumes worn by performers in the black metal genre, which I'm not very familiar with, so I'm just going to take their words for it. But it was the look was still unique enough to not be particularly linked to anybody in the genre. And apparently Derrickson had previously researched black metal, looking for inspiration for Boogle's symbol, because again, they didn't want to use anything that was already known. And some of the background music for the murder sequences were taken from ambient tracks by bands associated with Norwegian black metal scene. So, Ulver and Aghast were mentioned in my notes here. So going back to that 2020 study, again, my notes here say that Broadband Choices named this the scariest movie ever made. The study sampled 50 of the highest rated horror movies ever made based on reception on sites like IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, and Reddit, and then measured study participants' heart rates while watching the sampled films. The average resting heartbeat of the study participants was 65 BPM, beats per minute, but jumped to an average of 86 BPM watching Sinister. That was an increase of 32% and the highest among all of the sampled films. Now, I want to know how big the sample size of test subjects was. So, they did do a sequel to this. I have not seen it yet. Only one character carries over, and that's Deputy So-and-so. I don't know if it's played by the same guy. I think it is, but don't quote me. This was a very slick and rich supernatural film. I have not talked a whole lot about supernatural films on this channel. I normally do slashers and creature features. I do like me a good supernatural film. I love stuff like this. This actually, I am so mad at myself for waiting until now to watch it. Ethan Hawke, great performance. The kid actors did a pretty good job. What was his name again? I will learn his name eventually, especially if I watch some of the movies he was in. James Ransoni, Deputy So-and-so. Very good performance. The dynamic between husband and wife, it was definitely played well for her being so close to the edge of her patience, but still trying to hold it together because she's got kids she's got to worry about. And his slow descent into just agitation, and yeah, it was a very good film. Definitely watch it if it comes across your feed. Which brings me to, am I going to watch the second one? I might. I have read the plot synopsis, and it looks a little interesting. It's a little bit different. But there hasn't been anything else since then. I am also interested in some of these more Blumhouse productions. So, if any of you have watched the Blumhouse stuff, as long as it is not torture porn-esque, which is why, as much as I appreciate that he's become very, very popular, I'm probably not going to watch Terrifier. I'm just not a big torture porn girl. Things like Hostel and some of the, actually, it seems like a lot of the Eli Roth stuff, just, I don't know. I feel like torture porn just kind of lacks story. I mean, I have watched some of the Saw movies, and they were pretty good, but that's because there's an actual story there. I feel like with things like Terrifier, again, I've not watched it, but I've read plot synopsis and everything. It doesn't feel like something I'm interested in. It just feels like it's gore for gore's sake, which I appreciate some good special effects, but I gotta have a story to hold my interest. So, which is probably part of the reason why Blumhouse didn't really show up in my recommendations or in anything I looked at, because they were a newer studio at the time, and I was afraid they were doing torture porn. But if you guys have any Blumhouse films that are not torture porn that you guys like, share it in the suggestions below. I think I might try and get a hold of like Black Phone and some of the other stuff. I know that there's always a Blumhouse, or not always, but there have frequently been Blumhouse haunted attractions at like the Universal Halloween Horror Nights. So I know they're popular, which makes me very hopeful that there's good stories there. That is one thing about me, is I don't just like horror for horror's sake. I like a story there. Now, it could be a bare bones story, like, oh, we'll go back to Intruder. Rest in peace, Scott Spiegel. He recently passed on, and he was, one of the creators. That had a very flimsy story. Serial killer, picking off kids overnight, night crew at a grocery store. But there was a story there. Let's see. What else have I watched that has had a very thin, y'all know. I'm sure you've seen something that, has a story that's barely held together with chewing gum and duct tape. but it still managed to hold your interest. And that gets me off my tangent for now. So, yes, if you get the chance to watch Sinister, please watch it and tell me what you think. I really felt that was done very well. Cinematography was great. Music was great. The music that wasn't inspired or taken from black metal was done by, Christopher Young. He did a very good job with the score. The casting was really good. The writing was pretty solid. The story kept me interested. But again, I kept trying to take my brain back to the beginning to piece things together, and I kept missing stuff because there's just a lot going on. If that sounds like something you can get your teeth sunk into, I highly suggest taking a moment to watch this movie. With the spooky season at hand and all of that, I'm just gonna say it. Sinister is really good. And on that note, I'm gonna wrap this up. I'm gonna get back to doing what I do best, figuring out what horror movie I want to watch next. So I'm just gonna say it. Good night, my creeplings, and say it with me. I'll see you next time. Bye.